Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I begin by thanking you and the House authorities and all your staff for their hard work in allowing us to meet today. And can I also welcome the outstanding news that AstraZeneca is now rolling out a new UK-made vaccine approved by the MHRA that offers the hope to millions in this country and around the world. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the bill be now read a second time. And having taken back control of our money, our borders, our laws and our waters by leaving the European Union on January the 31st, we now seize this moment to forge a fantastic new relationship with our European neighbours based on free trade and friendly cooperation. And in a minute, Mr. Speaker, at the heart of this bill is one of the biggest free trade agreements in the world, a comprehensive. I will happily give way.
Point of order, Ian Blackford.
Mr. Speaker, I'm seeking your clarification. I'm just wondering how on earth the Prime Minister can talk about taking back control of waters when Scottish fishermen are going to have less access and less fish to catch as a consequence of his con deal.
Can I just say, first of all, it's not a point of order. We're very limited on time. Can we please try and keep to a tight agenda to allow everybody the time to contribute? Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I must nonetheless correct, although that was not a valid point of order, I must correct him in what he says, because in fact, under this deal, we have taken back control of our waters, and indeed Scottish fishermen from the get-go will have access to bigger quotas of all the relevant stocks, Mr. Speaker, and from the end of the transition period, as he knows full well.
Sorry. Look, I understand it's an important day. It's important that we all get on the record. It's more important I also get to the Leader of the SNP. What I wouldn't like to do is run out of time by the number of times he wants to stand for interventions. If the Prime Minister gives way, he'll give way straight away. But please, let's try and get the debate underway. At least give yourself time to hear what he's got to say before you disagree. Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, with great respect to the right honourable gentleman, I do feel I must correct him, because not only will we take back control of our waters, we will increase Scottish fishermen's share of all the relevant stocks. Cod, for instance, going up by 47% to 57%. North Sea haddock going up by 70% to 84%. That's just next year, Mr. Speaker. And in 5.5 years' time, we take control of the entire spectacular marine wealth of Scotland. It is only the Scottish Nationalist Party, Mr. Speaker, that would hand back control of the waters of this country to the UK with spectacular hypocrisy, Mr. Speaker. And indeed, having said that they would.
Sorry. This is a point of order. Point of order, Ian Blackford.
And could you point out to the Prime Minister that the name of my party is the Scottish National Party?
In fairness, I have pointed it out in the past. It is the Scottish National Party, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I wish the right honourable gentleman to know that I am using the word nationalist with a small n, and I don't think that he would disagree with that, which is semantically justifiable, I think, under the circumstances. And yet, in spite of that nomenclature, Mr. Speaker, they would hand back control of Scotland's waters and go back into the common fisheries policy. What this bill does, Mr. Speaker, is take back control. Absolutely not. Take back control of the spectacular marine wealth of Scotland and the rest of the UK. Because just in a moment, in the heart of this bill is one of the biggest free trade agreements in the world, as we've discussed in this chamber many times, Mr. Speaker, a comprehensive Canada-style deal worth over £660 billion, which, if anything, should allow companies to do even more business with our European friends, safeguarding millions of jobs and livelihoods in our UK and across the continent. In less than 48 hours, we will leave the EU single market and the customs union as we promised, and yet British exporters will not face a sudden thicket of trade barriers, but rather, for the first time in the history of EU agreements, zero tariffs and zero quotas. And just as we have avoided trade barriers, no. So we have also, no, Mr. Speaker, I think that plenty of members want to speak, so I've already taken plenty of interventions and points forward. I'm going to make some progress. Just as we've avoided trade barriers, so we've also ensured the UK's full control of our laws and our regulations. And there is a vital symmetry between these two achievements, because the central purpose of this bill is to accomplish something that the British people always knew in their hearts could be done, and yet which we were continually told was impossible. We were told we could not have our cake and eat it. Do you remember how often we were told that, Mr. Speaker? Namely, that we could trade and cooperate as we will with our European neighbours on the closest terms of friendship and goodwill, while retaining sovereign control of our laws and our national destiny. And that unifying thread runs through every clause of this bill, and it embodies our vision, shared with our European neighbours, of a new relationship between Britain and the EU as sovereign equals, joined by friendship, commerce, history, interests and values, while respecting one another's freedom of action and recognising that we have nothing to fear if we sometimes choose to do things different. I give way with pleasure to the honourable gentleman.
Thank the Prime Minister for giving way. Prime Minister, the devil is in the detail of anything that we have before us today. Can the Prime Minister confirm, as I hope it is, that we see the end of discrimination, the Hague preference is away, it's in the bin, the fact that the Killybegs Fishermen's Association are expressing dismay from the Republic of Ireland? Will the UK quotas be shared with Northern Ireland? Will there be tariffs for our boats from Portavogie, Ardglass and Kilkeel landing the fish they catch in Northern Ireland? And will the £100 million for the fisheries organisations, will that be shared equally across the whole of the United Kingdom? Those are real practical issues for us in Northern Ireland. Prime Minister, thank you.
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman, and I can assure him that the entire UK will share from the programme of investment in our fishing industry, and to get ourselves ready across the whole of the UK for the colossal uplift in fish that we will obtain. And even before the end of the transition period, I think the honourable gentleman should know that we'll be fishing about another 130,000 tonnes more fish in the UK than we are, 130,000 tonnes a year than we are at present. And currently, that is an opportunity that we must work to seize. And we have much to gain. We have much to gain from the healthy stimulus of competition. And this bill demonstrates, therefore, how Britain can be at once European and sovereign. And I think you'll agree, Mr. Speaker, that our negotiators accomplished their feat at astonishing speed. It took nearly 8 years for the Uruguay round of World Trade Talks to produce a deal, 5 years for the EU to reach a trade agreement with Canada, 6 for Japan. We've done this in less than a year, in the teeth of a pandemic, and we've pressed ahead with this task, resisting all the calls for delay, Mr. Speaker, precisely because creating certainty about our future provides the best chance of beating COVID and bouncing back even more strongly next year. And that was our objective. So I hope the House will join me in commending my noble friend Lord Frost and every member of his team for their skill, their mastery and their perseverance in translating our vision into a practical agreement. And let me also pay tribute to President Ursula von der Leyen, Michel Barnier and all our European friends for their pragmatism and foresight, for their understanding that it is profoundly in the interests of the EU to live alongside a prosperous, contented and sovereign United Kingdom. The House understands that the significance of the fact that this agreement is not EU law but international law, so there is no direct effect. The EU law will no longer have any special status in the UK. I think, Mr. Speaker, I've already given way quite a few times to the right honourable gentleman. And there is no jurisdiction for the European Court of Justice.
Point of order, Ian Blackford.
Mr. Speaker, I feel I have to point out to the House that the historic principle in Scotland, as established by law, it's the people of Scotland that are sovereign, and it's the people of Scotland that will determine to take them back into the European Union with independence.
The Prime Minister, Prime Minister, just to say, as the leader the SNP knows it is not a point of order, and I'm desperate to hear what he's got to say in his contribution. Rather than use it up now, why doesn't he just save it to get others in? Prime Minister.
Well, I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker. Of course, it was the Speaker of Scotland who took the sovereign decision, quite rightly, to remain in the UK, a once-in-a-generation decision. I think it highly unlikely the people of Scotland will take a decision to cast away their newfound freedoms and, indeed, the newfound opportunities, not least over the marine wealth of Scotland. We will be able to design our own standards and regulations, Mr. Speaker, and the laws that this House of Commons passes will be interpreted, and I know this is a keen interest to honourable and right honourable members, will be interpreted solely by British judges sitting in British courts. We will have the opportunity to devise new ways to spur and encourage flourishing sectors in which this country leads the world, from green energy and life sciences to synthetic biology. Yes, I give way to my right honourable friend.
I'm very grateful to the Prime Minister for giving way on that point. Some of us had different views on Brexit, but those debates are now for the history books. And anyone in this House and in the country should recognise the benefits of an agreement that goes beyond a free trade agreement, from science to energy to security. But will the Prime Minister capitalise on the excellent news that we've had today on the vaccine by pursuing an industrial strategy that puts science and technology at its heart, so that we can grasp the opportunities that come as the world bounces back from COVID during the year ahead?
Indeed,
Prime Minister,
Sorry.
Can I just help people and say interventions of those who are high up on the speaking list will understand if they get put down by continuous interventions, because I want to get as many people in as possible. So please. Thank you, Sir Bernard. No more. Prime Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to my right honourable friend, because I remember well working with him on his industrial strategy and his ideas for championing green technology and biosciences, and I can tell him that those ideas remain at the heart of this government's agenda, and we will certainly be using our newfound legislative freedom to drive progress in those sciences and in those investments across the whole of the UK. Because we will be free, Mr. Speaker, of EU state aid rules. We'll be able to decide where and how we level up across our country with new jobs and new hope, including with free ports and new green industrial zones of a kind I'm sure he'd approve of. And if, I'm just going to make an important point, if I may, Mr. Speaker, if in using our new freedoms, either Britain or the EU believes it is somehow being unfairly undercut, then, subject to independent third-party arbitration and provided the measures are proportionate, either of us can decide as sovereign equals to protect our consumers, but this treaty explicitly envisages that any such action should be infrequent, and it banishes the old concepts of uniformity and harmonisation in favour of the right to make our own regulatory choices and deal with the consequences. And, Mr. Speaker, every modern free trade agreement includes reciprocal commitments designed to prevent distortions of trade. And the true significance of the agreement embodied in this bill is that there is no role for the European Court of Justice, no ratchet clause on labour or environmental standards, no dynamic alignment with the EU state aid regime, or indeed any other aspect of EU law. In every respect, we have recovered our freedom of action, and I give way with pleasure to the honourable gentleman who's been rising up and down, Mr. Speaker, many, many times.
Thank you very much. But many honourable members will be facing a dire dilemma because they will feel that our country has been sold short. On the one hand, we have the Prime Minister's thin, terrible, burnt oven-ready deal, and on the other hand, we face the prospect of an even more damaging and destructive no-deal Brexit. So can the Prime Minister advise, given that services account for almost 80% of our economy, why is there so little for that sector within his deal? And in particular, why couldn't he negotiate equivalence and passporting rights for the all-important financial services sector?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it wasn't quite clear from that intervention which way the Labour Party is going to go on this, but whether he's going to go with his right honourable friend, the leader of the Labour Party, and vote for the deal, or whether he's going to join other members of the Labour Party and continue to dither and delay, we on these benches are going to get on, and we will be free of the strictures of the Common Agricultural Policy. We'll be able to conserve our landscapes and support our farmers exactly as we choose. And on Friday, now coming to a point that's already been raised several times, and I will repeat it, Mr. Speaker, because it's a wonderful point. For the first time in 50 years, on Friday, the UK will once again be recognised as an independent coastal state, regaining control of our waters, righting the wrong that was done by the Common Fisheries Policy throughout our EU membership. And of course, I've always recognised, Mr. Speaker, I've answered the point quite a lot from you guys. I'll give way to my honourable friend.
I thank the Prime Minister for giving way. He will know that Brixham, the most valuable fishing port in England, wants to see our waters regained, access control, and a rebuilding of the fishing industry in the UK. This deal delivers that. Can he go back and assure my fishermen and fishermen around the country that that is what this government is delivering on?
Absolutely right, Mr. Speaker, and the voice of Brixham should be heard up and down the country, because it is entirely correct and a point that might be registered with advantage by the gentleman opposite. I've always recognised, Mr. Speaker, that this was going to be a difficult period for our European friends and partners, because they've been fishing in these waters for decades, if not centuries. And at first, as the House will know, they sought an adjustment period of 14 years, but our negotiators whittled that down to 5.5 years, during which the UK's share, in that 5.5 years, the UK's share of our fish in our waters will rise from over half today to around 2/3. And of course, we'd have liked to have done this more quickly, but now it's also true that once the adjustment period comes to an end, there will be no limit, Mr. Speaker, no limit other than the limits that are placed by the needs of science and conservation on our ability to make use of our marine wealth. And 15% of the EU's historic catch from our waters will be returned to this country next year alone. And as I say, to prepare our fishing communities for that moment, we will invest £100 million in a programme to modernise their fleets and the fish processing industry, restoring, Mr. Speaker, and the right honourable gentleman opposite should listen to this, restoring a great British industry to the eminence that it deserves, levelling up communities across the UK, particularly and including Scotland, Mr. Speaker, where their interests, in my view, have been neglected for too long. So I do find it extraordinary that on the eve of this great opportunity, the declared position of the Scottish Nationalist Party is to hand control, with a small n, is to hand control of the very waters we've just reclaimed straight back to the EU. That is their policy. That is their policy, Mr. Speaker, and they plan to ensnare Scotland's fishing fleet in the dragnets of the Common Fisheries Policy all over again. And in the meantime, Mr. Speaker, guess what they're going to do today? Guess what they're going to do today? They're going to vote today for a no-deal Brexit. Or perhaps the gentleman opposite will tell me that he's going to vote for the deal.
I'm immensely grateful to the Prime Minister for briefly pausing that monologue that was designed for the RG. But on the issue of fish, he's waxing lyrical about how amazing this deal is. But I'd like to read him a quote from Andrew Locker, chairman of the British National Federation of Fishermen's Organisation. He says, "I am angry, disappointed and betrayed. Boris Johnson promised the rights to all the fish that swim in an exclusive economic zone, and we've got a fraction of that. Is he wrong?"
I'm afraid yes, he is, Mr. Speaker, because we will take back control not only of we'll become an independent coastal state from the 1st of January, but in 5.5 years' time, Mr. Speaker, we will be able to fish every single fish in our waters if we so choose, and that is the reality. And in the meantime, as I say, and he didn't deny it, I don't think I heard him deny it, that the Scottish National Party is going to vote against the deal They're effectively going to vote, Mr. Speaker, for no deal, after which they've campaigned against and denounced, proving once and for all that the interests of Scotland, England, Wales and Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales and Northern Ireland are best served by a one-nation party serving one united kingdom. Mr. Speaker, this deal was negotiated by a big team, and he should know this, from every part of our United Kingdom, and it serves the whole of the UK, not least by protecting the integrity of the United Kingdom single internal market and Northern Ireland's place within it. Our points-based immigration system will end free movement and give us full control over who enters the country. And by the way, on that point, I want to thank very much my honourable friend, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, for all he did to protect the interests of Northern Ireland. And at the same time, the deal provides certainty for airlines and hauliers who have suffered grievously during this pandemic. It guarantees the freedom of British citizens to travel to and from the EU and retain access to healthcare. It provides certainty for our police, for our border forces, for our security agencies who work alongside our European friends to keep our people safe. They're going to vote against this, Mr. Speaker. It provides certainty for our partnerships on scientific research, because we want our country to be a science superpower, but also a collaborative science superpower. It provides certainty for business, Mr. Speaker, from financial services to our world-leading manufacturers, including our car industry, safeguarding highly skilled jobs and investment across our country. As for the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Speaker, I am delighted that he's found yet another position on Brexit. And having plunged down every blind alley and exhausted every possible alternative, he's come to the right conclusion, namely to vote for this agreement which this government has secured. And I hope very much that the honourable gentleman opposite is going to tell us that he too is going to join his right honourable friend and vote for this agreement. Is that the case?
I'm very happy to confirm for the Prime Minister, and I'm grateful for giving away, that I will be voting for this agreement. He mentioned several times his levelling up agenda, but financial services and those working in this sector have been left entirely out of it. So does he not agree with me that every city, every town that is dependent on financial services, from Leeds to Manchester to Edinburgh and many in between, they have been levelled down and left out from this deal?
Well, it's great to hear a member of the Labour Party not only backing the bankers, Mr. Speaker, backing financial services, but also fantastic development, but also backing this deal. And he's quite right, because actually this deal does a great deal for services, for financial services, and for the legal profession, and many other professions. But alas, the good news about the Labour Party stops there, Mr. Speaker, because I'm told that the right honourable gentleman intends to ask the British people for a mandate to rewrite the deal in 2024. That's what he wants to do. I think, frankly, Mr. Speaker, we got Brexit done. Let's keep Brexit done, and let's keep Brexit done, and let's press ahead with this government's mission to unite and level up across our whole country and grasp the opportunities before us. Because I've always said, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to make some progress now because many members want to speak. I've always said that Brexit is not an end but a beginning, and the responsibility now rests with all of us to make the best use of the powers that we've regained, of the tools that we've taken back into our hands. So we're going to begin by fulfilling our manifesto promise to maintain the highest standards of labour and environmental regulation, because no caricature could be more inaccurate than the idea of some bargain basement Dickensian Britain, as if enlightened EU regulation has been our only salvation from Dickensian squalor. Our national standards have always been amongst the very best in the world, and this House can be trusted to use its new freedom to keep them that way without any outside invigilation. We are going to open, Mr. Speaker, a new chapter in our national story, striking free trade deals around the world, adding to the agreements with 63 countries we've already achieved, and reasserting global Britain as a liberal, outward-looking force for good. Detaching ourselves from the EU is only a prelude to the greater task of establishing our new role, and this country is contributing to more than any other to vaccinate people across the world against COVID, leading the way in preventing future pandemics. And we will continue to campaign for 12 years of quality education for every girl in the world. And I thank my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, for what he's doing on that. We will continue to lead the drive towards global net zero as we host COP26 in Glasgow next year. And I hope and believe, and I think actually the tone this morning has given me encouragement in this belief, Mr. Speaker. The mood in the House this morning, which seems to me on the whole to be positive. I hope, in spite of the as usual thin, synthetic and confected indignation that we hear from some of the benches opposite, I hope and believe that this agreement will also serve to end some of the rancour and recrimination that we've had in recent years. Allow us to come together as a country to leave old arguments, old, desiccated, tired, super-masticated arguments behind, move on and build a new and great future for our country. Because those of us, Mr. Speaker, who campaigned for Britain to leave the EU never sought a rupture with our closest neighbours. We never wanted to sever ourselves from our fellow democracies, beneath whose soil lie British war graves in tranquil cemeteries, often tended by local school children, testament to our shared struggle for freedom and everything we cherish in common. What we wanted was not a rupture, but a resolution of the old, tired, vexed question of Britain's political relations with Europe, which has bedevilled our post-war history. First we stood aloof, then we became a half-hearted, sometimes obstructive member of the EU. Now, with this bill, we're going to become a friendly neighbour, the best friend and ally the EU could have, working hand in glove whenever our values and interests coincide, while fulfilling the sovereign wish of the British people to live under their own laws, made by their own elected parliament. That is the historic resolution delivered by this bill, and Mr. Speaker, I commend it to the House.
The question is that the bill now be read a second time. Order, before I call the Leader of the Opposition, the House will want to be aware that I have accepted a request from the Government for an additional statement from the Secretary of State for Education on education return in January. This will be the second statement after the COVID-19 update and before the business statement. The ballot is already open in Members' Hub. I now call the Leader of the Opposition, the Right Honourable Keir Starmer.